Welcome to my basement, everybody. It's a huge basement that we have here.
Cavernous.
This is my friend Marty O'Donnell. You absolutely know this man from his work on Halo and Destiny, and several years of making us unbelievably cool sounds and music. And he's got a brand new studio to tell us about. The company name is Highwire. He's got a brand new game that's in the works for the Sony VR system, the PlayStation VR, called Golem. But first of all, Golem, is that how you pronounce it?
Well, that's how we pronounce it.
All right, very nice.
Because
Marty?
Golem is the enemy in Lord of the Rings.
Oh, of course,
so
okay.
this is Golem.
Okay, well, that was a long handshake.
Yes, Victor, that was uncomfortable for you?
No, I loved it. We can do some more. Yes, absolutely. Welcome to my basement, my friend.
I like this. This is great. Thanks for having me. I love seeing you again.
I know. We go way back, and I think it was Tommy that introduced us. We were kind of talking about this off camera, that through the Game Audio Network Guild, which I understand you just won a Lifetime Achievement Award last night.
I did, Lifetime Achievement, which is funny because once you win one of those, you're sort of done. You can't win another one, right?
Bullshit. Todd Howard won one this week too.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah.
Oh, good for Todd.
And I think Todd might be younger than me. He certainly looks younger than me. I mean, honestly, I think this business keeps us all young, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It's fun because I've been working with people who love games and love working in games. Do keep you young, and of course they also usually are young.
Yeah.
Which is why my nickname has been Marty the Elder for the last 20 years. So I just keep getting more and more elder, but inside I still feel the same.
That's awesome. Listen, I want to get the controversy stuff out of the way first of all.
What controversy?
I know, right? Okay. So it was very high profile, the split that you had with Bungie, and it was a shock. I think the whole industry was just completely confused and wondering how anything is quite so awful was kind of being broadcast in so many different ways. You may not be able to go into specifics because of legal things or whatever, but you catch us up. What happened? How are you feeling now? Is everything okay? Is it water under the bridge, or is there still some sore stuff there?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
It's pretty much water under the bridge.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to talk about it as a bridge. I think I've described it as like a gulf that just sort of continued to widen, and on both sides tried to bridge it. I was basically on one side, and the rest of the Bungie leadership sort of was on the other side, and we tried to bridge it for a while, and it just didn't work out. And it was probably the right thing to do. I think it was. In my opinion, it wasn't maybe handled in quite the best way.
Yeah.
And thus the sort of stuff that happened afterwards. But that's all behind us now. I'm looking forward, and I have a new company, and there's a bunch of old dogs, and we're doing new tricks. So that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I still have a ton of friends at Bungie, and one of the outcomes of the arbitration was that I'm still a pretty good stockholder in Bungie, and so I wish Bungie the best. And
your work is very much a part of Destiny still. Every time I boot it up, I'm like, I see your face, man. And every time I play Halo, I see your face too.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate that. And it's funny because I've known this for a while. I'm actually teaching one afternoon a week at DigiPen in Seattle, and or Redmond actually technically, and they had me do a sort of a historical retrospective working on Halo 1, and I said, get the original Xbox, and get an NTSC monitor, and let's get the original setup for surround sound speakers. And it's like nobody could find any of that technology, like the specific thing that made it all work back 15 years ago. It's hard to find some of that stuff.
I know.
But the thing I continue to see from especially talking to fans all around the world and going around is people always remember the music, and the music is always accessible.
Yeah.
You don't need to do anything but just jump on the internet or pop your iTunes player or whatever, and you can listen to the music, and it brings back all the memories, or certainly a lot of the memories. And that means that I'm just lucky to be able to be in a position where I make stuff that will stay with people a long time and is actually easily accessible. So that's sometimes better than actually making the game in terms of longevity.
Well, I mean, one of the greatest things about that original Xbox, and I freaking loved that console. I thought it was so ahead of its time and so yeah, I don't know, technologically advanced, and it was like pushing 720p already. It was getting people into the HD era, but it also had surround sound
Yes.
capabilities in a really proficient way.
Right.
And we've progressed somewhat since then for sure, but that was really a revelation to hear music like yours and sound effects coming from, every discrete signal and every
Yes.
discrete kind of channel around your living room and stuff like that. Has your job changed quite a bit since, crafting music, and you did a lot of the soundscapes and sound
Yes.
effects and stuff? Has it changed a lot since those days, or did you kind of really define what your job was with the Halo?
Yeah, to an extent, that's a good way to put it. I think because the Xbox, the original Xbox, was so cutting edge, especially for me in the audio area.
Yeah.
I was talking to the Brian Schmidt.
Yeah.
If you can edit
We can
that.
say shit on the show, but it's not a nice thing to call Brian, buddy.
No, he's such a sweetheart. Who I've known forever. He was one of the first guys I met in the industry, but he was at Xbox at the same time I was. He was sort of running the design of the technical specs for audio.
Yeah.
And he got when Bungie was being bought by Microsoft to bring Halo over to the Xbox. I was still wondering whether I wanted to go with Bungie
Yes.
because I had a commercial company in Chicago.
Right.
So I thought, well, I certainly want to finish Halo because this is a really cool game, but I didn't think it was going to last. I mean,
Yeah.
I thought maybe I'll go to Seattle for a year and then go back to Chicago.
Sure. How can you know?
You can't know.
Yeah.
But the thing that really attracted me is I kept hearing that we're going to have 5.1 surround sound in real time. And I'm like, no, you can't encode and decode in real time.
Yeah.
It's like, no, we've got a thing. Dolby's done this thing, and we've got the chip and the whole thing. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm going to make a game that has real time Dolby surround sound. And just before, within months of the release of the Xbox, there was potentially that chip wasn't going to be in. And I mean, I remember going over to Brian, like, Brian, you promised me Dolby surround sound. That's why I moved out here. And, they got it in.
Busser down there?
No, yes, he was.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
I think wow. I'm not sure if he was yet.
Okay, I remember having a big
But
Dolby.
I wasn't actually talking with Dolby. That was all
Okay.
Brian's stuff. You should ask him what happened.
Okay.
But anyway, it did get in.
Yeah.
And I still remember feeling like if you haven't played Halo in surround sound, you really haven't played Halo.
Yeah.
Because having a rocket shot at you going over your shoulder and exploding behind you, and you'd hear the explosion behind you,
Yeah.
and all the debris from the cliff falling and scattering all around you,
Yeah.
was such a viscerally amazing experience.
I got to tell you what it was like from my perspective,
Okay.
okay? Because I had already been doing a number of years of game coverage, PlayStation 1, PlayStation, Tommy and I were reviewing, like some of our old stuff is out there, right? So you watch that stuff, it's like, holy crap, how we were terrible, but also the games.
You were 12 years old.
Well, we were very young. But, when the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox started to kind of take the reins of where we were going with this, was also the time that we were expanding into the States with G4 and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And we were having access to the best entertainment that was being created in the world easily. Like, stuff was being sent to us all the time, and we did this whole year of Xbox Watch in partnership with Microsoft
excellent.
because it was a new console and a new idea for them, and we were kind of spreading the word about their dreams with all of this stuff. But I also, I had bought a home, and I had a whole sort of, this is the genesis of Vic's Basement. To begin with, I had one of those kick-ass home theater type setups, and I remember having all my surround sound stuff and a projector screen.
Oh, excellent.
It was
Okay.
a real immersion into the game space, and when I hooked up the Xbox and I played Halo, and I heard the bullet shells over here and grenade launching stuff over there, grenade explosions over there, and your music just filling the room, and the vocal, like the choir stuff, and it was unbelievable, man.
Good.
I mean, like chills down the spine. And honestly, it must have like precursor to VR in a lot of ways, right? Like, because especially with the size of the screen and everything, I was like seriously in moments of gameplay,
Right.
not so much in Halo, but in some of the stuff that I was playing, you'd get nausea, because you're completely thrown into this other world, man. And
Well, I'm certainly hoping that that nausea is not the standard of judgment
No.
about like new technology. But yeah, the thing is, I was talking about this the other day, that with the original Xbox or any 2D screen that you're doing,
Yes.
You're really looking into a window, and your world is a window that you sort of like move with your thumbsticks, and you have this camera, but the window stays right here.
Sure. Yeah.
But the audio field is the thing that envelops you.
Yeah.
And so when you asked, what is your job, has it changed? And it really hasn't, because I've always thought about the audio in a completely immersive, spherical. This is your audio, right?
Yeah.
But the difference is when you have just the window in front of you to look through, you don't get the visual experience, that presence,
Right.
quite as good, which is why you kept having to get bigger and bigger screens to try to get it.
Simulate the
Yeah.
idea that you're being enveloped by the visual.
And now I think VR, and yes, VR is just starting, and it's hard to even show on a 2D.
It is.
It's just hard to get people
Yeah.
to understand what's going on. But the thing I would say is, just in the same way that your audio has been for a while a spherical, all-enveloping world,
Yeah.
now that's what the visuals are, because you are actually there. So when the rocket is flying over your head, you can look and you follow it, and you're not changing your camera. You're
Right.
actually physically looking, and so it all matches together. Plus, I know where your ears are,
Yeah.
and I only used to know where you were sitting, hopefully.
Right. Wow. Okay.
So I knew where your sweet spot was.
Yeah.
Now I know where your ears are.
Yeah.
And that technologically, and there's going to be a lot of amazing things that happen, and experiences that, talented, aesthetically attuned people in the game business are going to make,
Yeah.
both visually, design, and orally.
Yeah.
I think that are going to be amazing.
I'm starting to become a believer in this. No, I really am. Like I've really just had my first tastes with the Samsung Gear VR, and I could see. Like I played this game called Gunjack, which is about as simple and sort of mobile-esque a video game escape into VR is right now. But you really felt like a giant ship flying over your head, and you could look down, and you see your body and everything. It's an amazing first step, and I know that Oculus, and I know that the Vive, and especially the PlayStation VR, which I think has probably the best chance to reach a lot of people this year, they're going to be offering some pretty amazing things. But I want to get into Golem in a sec, but I have to ask, why still the attraction for games? You've been a part of some of the best-selling video games ever made, and because of that, I would imagine that you are constantly contacted by creators in music and in movies to kind of pull you in other directions, but you are staying and you've created your own game studio. What's the attraction with video games?
Well, for one thing, especially when you have a sort of public, messy, legal thing happening, you don't necessarily get as many phone calls as you might think. So, but to be honest, like I've thought about just going in maybe I'll just like go back to commercials, or I'll go just try to go straight into just doing film work, or just composing music. But the thing was, I was always an audio director and someone interested in the new technology and how that all goes together with writing and voice acting and
got the taste.
and sound design and music, and of course all having it be an interactive experience. And for at least the last 20 years, if not more now, I think in '93 I had my epiphany that this was the future when I played Myst. And I thought, yes, this is the next cool place to be. If I had come of age in the 1950s, which I didn't, I would have wanted to work with Rod Serling or something, and like pioneer in television. But movies and TV were not pioneering areas anymore. But the game industry was like, wow, this is a really interesting, cool place to be. So I guess I still have the taste. And as soon as I was free, a couple years ago, almost 2 years ago, my old designer friend Jamie Griesemer, sort of caught me right away and said, Marty, forget everything. Let's just talk. Let's talk about what's new. Let's talk about what's next. And he was ready to go. And we started talking about what's the next cool thing, because, the Xbox in 2000 was the next cool thing.
Absolutely.
And we were somehow at the right place at the right time and got to solve some issues that no one else was solving.
Yep.
And it was like, is there another thing, Jamie? And he's like, yeah, VR.
Nice.
I'm like, okay, I'm not a believer yet. Show me what this is.
Yeah.
And so I am now a believer. I
Yeah.
think it is, it's just, you think about it, it's so early, and it's actually an infant. I mean,
Yeah.
can you go buy one right now today? I mean, you got Gear VR, you're
gotta-
waiting for
Gear
Oculus
VR
stuff.
is the only thing that you can actually go that's
Right.
actually impressive, especially for the price point.
Right.
But it does feel like baby's first VR.
Yeah,
when you
yeah,
pop it on.
yeah. And I mean, I think it's gonna be probably a slow adoption, and those of us who are on the creative side making content, we're gonna all figure out by looking at what each other does. It's a really open community. Nobody's being real precious with the way they're trying to solve things, because we all know that if none of us are going to solve it completely by ourselves, we're
Yeah.
going to have to look at what other people do, talk to other designers and engineers and artists, and go, oh, okay, yeah, this is what works in VR, and this doesn't work in VR.
Yeah, I've heard that Jason Rubin, who is the president at Oculus, is incredibly excited about PlayStation VR launching, because he feels like, and I don't know if he's been quoted on this, but I heard this. So, if Jason, if you're pissed that I'm saying this and I'm misquoting you, let me know. We'll have you on the show. But I heard that he's excited that PlayStation VR is coming out there, because that has a really good shot at sort of expanding the market and letting people know that this is coming, and it's going to be available in multiple formats and price points and stuff like that. Is that, in your mind, the biggest challenge that VR has right now? Is the expense, but also the choice that now consumers have to make? It's another format war.
No,
No?
I don't think that's the challenge. Now, it might be the challenge for the individual hardware manufacturers, because
Right.
they want to win, or they
Right.
want to have a good position.
Yeah.
I think VR's biggest challenge is going to be getting enough people to have a great experience especially their first experience in VR.
They got to try it.
They got to try it,
Yeah.
and they have to have an experience that is so compelling. They go, I want to do that some more. I want to have that. I did it at my friend's house, and now I need to go buy that.
Yeah.
And I mean, how expensive are iPhones?
Yeah.
I mean,
know.
and everybody has an iPhone.
Yeah.
And they don't even think twice about. I mean, not everybody. Some people have Androids. I understand that. But
yeah.
the point is, Apple's success with the iPhone doesn't hurt the Android.
Yeah.
It's like everybody has a smartphone now. Everybody the technology keeps advancing. But if it was frustrating,
Yeah.
or it wasn't a good experience, it doesn't matter how cheap it is.
Yeah.
So I think it's a two-edged sword. You've got, you have to have really good, solid hardware, but the aesthetic experience that is provided, the content,
Yeah.
is going to be the thing that sells VR.
Right.
And there's this extra level of, there's an extra hill that we all know about, and it's VR sickness. It's
Yeah.
simulation sickness.
Yeah.
And when we were first doing first-person shooters on the console, like you said, there were you could do things that would start to make you feel kind of queasy.
Yeah, for sure.
And there were some games that just made you feel queasy right away.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of learning curve with field of view and motion blur and I don't even know all the stuff that
Yeah.
the
Well,
experts
I
figured
think
out.
vertigo is going to be a big deal in VR.
Yeah.
I think that idea of height, I mean, and that was what got me feeling that oomph when I projected my first game up there. I was playing SSX.
Oh,
And it
wow.
was so huge.
Yeah.
It was the first SSX, and it was so big and so beautiful and so steep down the mountain that I actually felt it in my body just off of a rudimentary PlayStation 2, I think,
Right.
architecture back then.
Right.
So now with this high fidelity visual that you can't escape, yes,
Right.
that's going to be a challenge,
Yeah.
but it's also going to be an incredibly thrilling experience
Yeah,
too, right?
yeah. Well, I mean, this is the thing. What worked on a 2D, yes, 3D artwork,
Yeah.
but it was still 2D. It was still the window.
Yeah.
To have something that is actually virtually real.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're looking around. There are game design elements and traditions that don't really come over. They don't really translate.
Yeah.
And so you can't, and this is our opinion, of course,
Yeah.
but
yeah.
in my experience so far, you can't just take something that was a great 2D game
Yep.
and just say, oh, now it's been VRized, right?
Yeah.
Now it's a VR game.
Yeah.
And suddenly you're like, this is not, I don't feel good. I don't like what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm not having a great experience.
Yes.
And I'd rather just play it the way I used to play it.
Yeah.
Well, that to me is it's not a good design.
So that's a danger. Okay, well, let's talk about Golem.
Yes.
Because it sounds like, like we first started to hear about this maybe 5 months ago or something like
Yeah.
that. The first trailers, the
Yep.
first kind of things bubbling
not
up
even
about.
that long.
Yeah, and it was awesome, but it was surprising because I think for a lot of people, myself included, it feels like that Bungie kind of stuff was just happened because time is moving so fast.
Right.
I don't know if that's just me, but time is moving fast. And so this coming together, it's not only a new studio, but the game is looking great. I guess it's been in development for a little while, though, right? It hasn't just been, 6 months or 7 months or something like that. It's
Right.
been, you guys have been working on this, trying to tackle some pretty core technology and
Yeah.
core kind of visual kind of look to this thing for a little while.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it was almost 2 years ago that Jamie approached me, and the first thing we knew is that if the two of us were going to get together,
Yeah.
he's creative director, I'm an audio director, he's the designer, I'm whatever I am, a musician and whatever.
Yeah.
But like we always worked well together.
Yeah.
But we knew we were going to need a third wheel, a third leg of the stool, which was Jared Knoftel, who had founded Airtight Studios, and he wanted to work with us, and he's
Right.
a brilliant programmer, and so he's our technical director.
Okay.
So we sort of had the tripod, and then we decided, let's get some people. First of all, we didn't want to use our own money, so we talked to Jason Rubin,
Yeah.
and it was interesting because right at that time, Jason just took over for Oculus.
Yes.
And we talked to him, and he was like, "Wow, I love what you guys are doing. I love what you guys are thinking. I don't have the infrastructure yet to
Yeah.
like really get going on this." And
Yeah.
we're like, "Yeah, but we want to work now."
Yeah.
And Sony was there and said, "Here's a first party, this bunch of stuff. Spend 6 months doing a bunch of prototypes."
Cool.
And so that's what we did. We got our first little contract was with Sony to do prototypes, and the one that sort of stuck was this Golem idea, and so we kind of did a rough demo on this a year ago,
Yeah.
and showed it to Sony again and others
Yeah.
At GDC a year ago.
Right.
And
Is Shadow of the Colossus an influence?
not really.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me, because I've just seen some stills and some images and stuff like that, but it evokes that
Well,
flavor.
there is a certain idea that there is the concept of scale is really important, and we want people when they're in a 6-inch doll,
Yeah.
and they're walking around a bedroom, things are really really big.
Yeah.
So there's that great scale idea.
Yeah.
But we also have eventually you get powerful enough that you're able to control 20, 30-foot stone giants called golems.
Nice.
And then the place you were before is like tiny, and you're huge, but there's a big golem that's as huge as you are. And so I would say Shadow of the Colossus is an influence only in the sense that was a great game to give you that sort of shifting scale feel. Yeah.
Sure, cool. So tell me how you guys came up with this idea. Like, what was the core kind of story and concept that you wanted to build with this game?
Well, Jamie probably he's an idea machine. He
Yeah.
had almost immediately, there were 16 different ideas. I remember getting these like 2-3 page documents for each one of the ideas.
That's
I'm
great.
like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
yeah, Jamie, this is great. And we pitched them, we talked about how we would flesh them out, and that was really Jamie's thing.
Yeah.
I think one of the main things he was trying to do, and this might not have to be once people are used to VR. We talk about how in Halo 1 we had to introduce the controls and the precision of the controls
Sure.
with the 2 analog sticks, and aiming and jumping and looking and inversion and shields and all these things. We had a very complex long
Made
tutorial.
a PC game on a console.
Yeah, and we had this long tutorial in the game because we had to teach people how to play this. And by Halo 2, the tutorial was probably cut in half. And I think by Halo 3, there was no tutorial.
Yeah.
It's just that, so in that sense, we're like, okay, we're introducing people to VR.
Yeah.
So at this point, the hard part is when you're in VR, you think there's a one-to-one relationship to everything you're doing, but
Yeah.
there's sort of not always.
Yeah.
So there can be that little bit of a disconnect. So if I have some sort of, if I'm holding the move controller, let's say, and it's supposed to be something,
Yeah.
and you're sitting there, and I do this, well, in my living room I'm doing this,
Yeah.
and in the game my hand is stopping.
Gotcha.
So we thought, let's actually make that part of the game. So you play as a handicapped child who can't leave their bedroom, but they realize through the story that they have some magical powers.
That's amazing.
And they put this band on their head that somehow has blue glowing things on it. So we're like really making it easy. It's like, yep, now put on the PSVR.
Yeah.
Just like your character's doing.
Right.
So there's a fictional reason why you're doing everything.
Yeah.
And then hold up the magic crystal, which is exactly the same size as a move.
Yeah. That's great.
And as you look into it, that calibrates you, and then now you're wandering around doing cool things. So it's a little bit like Inception. You're playing a thing inside a thing. And we might not have to do that in the future because people are going to go, yeah, I get it, it's VR.
Yeah.
So, but that's sort of how we're doing it.
But that's a very, very clever, super meta way to get into any game. Pure. I mean, even if that came down 5 years down the pipeline,
Yeah.
that still sounds like a great, great concept.
That's Jamie. He's super meta.
And that's veteran development right there.
Right.
On display.
Absolutely. Old dogs, but we're new tricks. So there you go.
Awesome. It was a couple years in development. They were kind of trying to get you into this. Did it take a lot of coaxing? Did you think of some other kinds of ideas or other kinds of places that you could have gone, or was like, okay, everything you're telling me makes a lot of sense. I'm joining up right away.
No, I was. The first thing was let's start a studio.
Yeah.
And the three of us were the core of the studio, and let's see what can happen. Now I had other things going on at the time, so
Yeah.
it was really great that, especially Jamie and Jared, were able to pick up my slack and get this thing rolling. But the whole idea was like, we need to have a project so we can build a studio. So
Yeah.
we need to be able to build a project and a studio at the same time.
Right.
And as soon as it sort of took off a year ago, and Sony said, yeah, we want you to go with that, and it gave us the go ahead. Then we were able to hire some more people, especially our friends
Yeah.
who were in Seattle, so anyway, that's what we did.
Okay.
And so essentially, I think we moved into our space. It might have been last July or August. So we're not a full year in. So the game right now, I would still say is alpha, maybe pre-alpha. Actually,
Right.
I would say pre-alpha.
Right.
But it's a small team, and
Yeah.
the scope is not. We're not trying to do a 50-hour long
Right.
massive thing. We're trying to do the thing that introduces people to what it's like to play a real game.
Right.
So it's not a prototype, it's not a demo, it's not a tech demo. This
Right.
is a game with a story, with characters, with a beginning, middle, and end, with exploration, and we're pushing for like a 5-6 hour campaign. If you
Right.
do more, it'll be longer. If you wanted to zip through it, maybe it's 4 hours.
Yeah.
But that's a real game.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, no, you just can't sit with any of these HMDs for hours and hours at a time.
Yeah.
So one of the game mechanics that we have is that there are times when you take it off.
Yeah.
And you take it off for game reasons and fictional reasons.
And then you look at the TV.
And then you look at the TV.
Wow.
So there's some the ability to have the TV and the speakers and the headphones and the HMD all working simultaneously is really, really good, and we're taking advantage of that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, this is something I think that a lot of people, including myself, are kind of questioning. Is like, what is the TV doing?
Right.
While you have VR on, or even computer screens for the other guys. Is it what's it doing?
Well, right now the TV, if we have you out of the HMD, you're
Yeah.
doing traditional stuff. You're
Okay.
doing some traditional things that you might do in any game.
Mm-hmm.
But when you put it on, now you're in VR. The world for you personally is the world. But anybody who walks into the room, like your wife,
Yeah.
or your significant other of any kind,
Yeah.
actually sees that you're not just being an idiot. There's things on the screen. She's seeing what you're seeing.
Okay. Is it split up into?
No, it's just one screen, and
Okay.
it's. I think it looks pretty good.
Yeah.
And you get to see. Oh, you're anybody who's in the room could say, wait, turn right, go into that tunnel.
That's cool.
And
So suddenly there's a cooperative.
there could be
a potentially
yes.
which I think is
You're
also
not
the
just
great.
so isolated, which
Excellent.
we also thought was the problem with VR is like how isolating it could be.
Yes,
and it doesn't have to.
A little indulgent too, right?
well, yeah, of
I mean, like even when I was testing out the Gear VR,
Yeah.
I was in my office chair just spinning around, going wee, just on my own, and I was like, man, this would be really awful for someone to watch.
People who are playing games don't always look all that coordinated and elegant anyway.
True.
But VR makes it even worse,
Yeah.
and I think we're trying to minimize that. It's great that Sony has us so that we have a decent picture to look at of what the player is seeing.
And it follows your head tracking and everything?
follows your head
so
tracking.
it's basically the right thumbstick.
Exactly. As a
Okay.
matter of fact, that's interesting you would say that, because
Yeah.
if you try our game,
Yeah.
because you're a veteran gamer,
Yeah.
you will sort of think of yourself because of our incline movement scheme.
Yeah.
You'll say, "Oh, I see. I'm just the right thumbstick," and
Yeah.
then you'll move way too much.
Right.
People who are not gamers, they sort of naturally get that the moves are very subtle and things
Gotcha.
work.
The way
So-
our heads would track. normally,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
It's especially with movement. It's more just changing your center of gravity enough that you could walk.
Right.
So in real life, in order to walk, you have to just lean a little bit.
Yeah.
You don't even realize it. You
Yeah.
just change the center
It's
of gravity.
It's intentional more than anything, right?
Yeah, and you put your foot in front of you so you don't fall.
Yeah.
In our game, you do that same little lean, and your character moves.
Okay. And then how do you steer? Is it just by looking?
Just by looking.
Okay, so it's just okay,
Yeah.
cool.
And one
Crazy.
of the other things is and this is, I didn't even realize how Jamie did this, but I think he's trying to patent this whole thing.
Oh wow.
We'll see. I
Yeah.
doubt it. But if you look
Patent
over
it with the
there-
word edge.
That'll work. If you look and you start moving in that direction, because when you're actually looking and decide to move there, you move your body, your shoulders and everything turn, but actually it's your neck is turning back to center you.
Yeah.
So what we're doing in the game is you look and you start moving, and then whatever direction you're moving in, you will eventually still be facing forward. So
Right.
even though you turn, you don't have to stay turned in order to go in that direction.
Got you.
But it happens sort of subtly behind the scenes.
Right.
It's magic.
Yes.
And people don't even seem to question that
just
it
works.
works. It just works. And
Yeah.
that's the other thing is, you can't have a bunch of text on the screen telling you what to do.
Totally. Because that's the lack of immersion, right? That's
Exactly.
the loss of immersion right there.
It's not only a loss of immersion. It's like the text is like floating in the air,
Yes.
and if it says to push, hit the A button.
Yeah.
Well, where's your hands?
Yeah.
And we don't want to have a virtual controller in the screen or anything like that. So it has to just feel natural. You learn it as you go.
Yeah.
And there's just can't be a lot of explaining.
Totally. You're in the Seattle area.
Yeah.
And, obviously Valve is there and the Vive is kind of being developed right there. Did you talk with them too?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been over there. We've seen all their demos. We know those people. It's great. The community. Right now, we're in Pioneer Square.
Right.
And I bet you there's like 30 different small startup VR companies right there.
And they're
it's-
building their own headsets and their own technology.
Well, not their own headsets, but they're working with Vive and Oculus
Okay,
and
gotcha.
all the different ones, and including PlayStation.
Yeah.
And but it's just so it's a great little community, and it was great to get the people who, Valve was right behind us.
Is this
for
the
years.
Apple II era of this kind of? I mean, are we there? I mean, obviously it's way more advanced technologically and everything, but is it that kind of? Is that a pretty good comparison?
It might be just after the Apple II.
Okay.
But I don't think it's the Lisa. I'm hoping this is the Macintosh. So we'll see.
Well, you know what I mean. I mean,
Yeah,
there was
yeah,
a
yeah.
community, and
Yes.
the internet wasn't even around, so people were writing letters to each other and selling, games out of plastic bags, and they would show up to
Yep.
flea markets and things like that. It's not that,
Right.
but there was a community.
Yeah.
And does the VR feel like
Oh.
we're all in this together, and we all need to kind of rise the tide and rise the boats, kind of
Yes,
thing?
absolutely. And as we hang out with other VR developers, we're always talking about, well, how are you solving this? And like, well, we tried this. Oh, yeah, that that's not working for us. But well, we're doing a different kind of game. So
Yeah.
we are really nobody is being, like I said before, nobody's being precious with their technology.
Yes.
They're all talking about it because we know that this first generation isn't the thing that this one
That
thing
will
that's
tip
going
it
to
all over.
solve
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
So we're all going to learn from each other.
Right.
And at least at this point, it does feel pretty friendly and collaborative.
Well, you've got, specifically with Golem, you have this traditional television screen dynamic as well as the VR dynamic. And of course, my question is about Microsoft and HoloLens, which kind of seems to be in that zone with its AR technology.
Yeah.
Was that an idea possibly for you guys, or was VR the space that you wanted to go full on from the beginning and definitely going in that direction?
Okay, well, I have friends at Microsoft
Yes,
still.
you do, I know.
And we're also fascinated by AR. And conceptually, there are, really interesting design issues with AR. And during that, like I said, during the last year and a half, I've been, dipping my toe into lots of different waters. And I was able to go see Magic Leap. And I can't say much about it, but I would say that both HoloLens and Magic Leap and AR technology is going to be a major player in whatever this is.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that we say AR is this and VR is that, I have a feeling those things are going to just sort of meld at some point. And
Yes.
not that it's always going to, like everything's going to be the same, but I think
Out of the same piece of kit, you'll be able to do what you want to do.
I think that the idea that you have something that immerses you either in the real world that's enhanced or a completely virtual world
Yeah.
that seems real enough. It could all be part of the same technology eventually.
I hate to keep bringing up the Gear VR. It's my only sort of connection point to this
Sure.
thing, but it's a mobile thing. It's tetherless.
Yeah.
It's got a camera in the front,
Right.
and it's the phone that you stick on. So that is a potential VR AR device just there.
Right.
And so that seems like a real natural kind of way to keep building these things. If any one of these devices had a camera in the front,
Right.
suddenly you've got an AR application, right?
Yes, you do.
Right. Okay. I'm not telling you anything new. Okay.
No.
Yeah.
But let me just say,
Yeah.
here's what I think is fun about being in this industry, and this
Yeah.
is probably why I don't want to just, well, I shouldn't say this because I might eventually, but
Yeah.
I still like not just being the music guy, not
Yeah.
just being, I'm just going to compose for somebody else's thing. Being sort of at the bleeding edge of technology. Think about all the work that Microsoft put into Kinect.
Yeah.
Think about all the work Sony put into the Move.
Yeah.
And obviously the Wii.
Yeah.
And to a certain extent, some of those technologies that are spectacular, they're not everything clicked yet.
Yeah.
Their day hadn't come. It's
Yeah.
like, what was Apple's tablet back in the 90s?
Newton.
The Newton.
Yeah.
It didn't mean they shouldn't do the iPad or the iPhone. It wasn't quite right yet.
Yeah.
And I think we're in a better place with AR and VR. It's like it's going to come together, but it's, all of a sudden now, the camera on the phone and the camera on your TV for Kinect, or the camera for PlayStation and Move,
Yeah.
all these things have a reason for being.
Yeah.
And even, we shipped Microsoft and Brian Schmidt shipped I don't know how old this technology is, called HRTF. It allows you to do three-dimensional 3D audio in headphones, and it was part of the hardware of the Xbox.
Yeah.
And nobody really took advantage. We had it. We
Yeah.
did something with it, but it was like, nobody played Halo that way.
Yeah.
Well, HRTF now has a real reason for being
Yes.
because of VR.
Right.
And, the Move is like incredibly essential to our game, and it works so well. It's so precise.
And esports, I would imagine, too, right? All of these tournament players that need to
Yeah.
hear precisely where enemies are and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right?
So, this technology sometimes gets introduced early and
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily have a reason for being, and now it does.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
And that's, I guess, what keeps you young and keeps you invested and keeps you excited, and every day is a different day. And
Yes.
does it feel similar, as you drive into work today, to work on Golem and to work at Highwire, as it did when you were sort of building Halo with Bungie back in the time? Back in the day?
Yeah, you know, there was a point, I think we've talked about this, Jamie and I have talked about it. I think the original Halo team was, 9 guys in one of the side rooms at Bungie. When Bungie was bought by Microsoft and we were, like, we're going to be a launch title for Xbox.
Yeah.
I think there was probably 34 people or something total.
Wow.
So it was a very, very different feel. And I think working in AAA games and doing that for a long time, and I looked around towards the end of my time there, and there were over 600 people, and you can't know everybody. I remember my wife asking me one time, I think it was towards the end of Halo 2, she goes, "How many people work at Bungie now?"
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, I wonder how many that is. And I walked around mentally I walked around the studio in my head, and I named every single person, and it was like 63.
Yeah. Wow.
And I'm like, 63, and I named them all off.
Yeah.
And that was the last time I was able to do that, which
Yeah.
was like 2003 or something,
Wow.
because we just kept getting bigger and bigger. And when you get bigger, and AAA, you have extra pressures from all sorts of places, and maybe the only way to do those kind of projects is to have a really big sort of corporation kind of structure.
Yeah.
And I think just probably deep down that doesn't appeal to me.
Yeah.
And so one
Is
of the
this a
things,
never again kind of statement from Marty O'Donnell, or is this never say never again?
never say never again. I
Okay.
think I've said that.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
There are some advantages to having huge budgets and
Sure.
huge teams, and I mean to the point where like I had a team of like I think 12 audio people
Yeah.
that I was directing, and now our entire team is 10.
Yeah.
The entire team.
Yeah.
I'm the only audio guy. As a matter of fact, I had coffee the other day with one of my former colleagues, and he says, "Well, are you cutting footsteps again?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm cutting footsteps. I'm making sand fall noises, and I'm
You're in the Foley room.
I'm doing everything again, and I love it. It's like,
Yeah.
why not? Why
Yeah.
shouldn't I?" So yeah.
Yeah. We interviewed Ron Gilbert yesterday, and he said the same thing.
Oh,
He's been
yes.
through every
Yeah.
level of this, and I asked him if he'd ever wanted to make a big, and he said, no way, no. He said the magic number was 12.
Well, I'm not sure what the magic number is,
Yeah.
but I don't think it's like 750. I at least for me,
Yeah.
I don't know how to it's so hard when you're 1/700th of,
Yes.
even if you're like in charge of certain things, you're never really in charge.
I got to
There's so
tell
much
you though,
politics.
the tough thing is on the consumer side and
Yeah.
the player side.
Yeah.
It is amazing to get lost in the division. It is amazing to play multiplayer in Halo 5 and to see this constant stream of update.
Yeah.
And I know that is the great challenge of this creative art form.
Yes.
And a business is to kind of keep everybody happy, and it's not binary. There is no this sucks and this is shit and this is great. There's got to be a happy middle ground. And I think during the PlayStation 2, Xbox, that era up until the 360, and there was this really glorious time where the studios weren't too big, and there was this constant stream of double and triple A, up to 100 people team type games. And I don't know if we're ever going to get back to that again.
Yeah, I don't know. The interesting thing though to me is there are probably ways of solving this. Like right now, the 10 people we have, we believe that those 10 people would be the core of any AAA studio.
Yeah.
You could easily, maybe not that easily, but I think you could easily build a AAA studio around the 10 people we have.
Sure.
But we're trying to say, well, let's only add people in that can have that kind of talent and skill and leadership, and let them lead contractors.
Yeah.
And third-party people who
Right.
are, and they're ready to go. And
Yeah.
the industry has gotten to the point where there are people who could specialize, and companies that specialize in a certain area, and then our, environment art director can say, all right, here's what I need you to do.
Yeah.
We get that
Yeah.
from 50 people in a studio that does that.
I feel like the movie model.
Yes.
You put a production together, you hire up, you scale down, you hire, and everybody's understanding that that's
Yeah.
the way it's going to go.
Yeah.
So you've got Golem on the way, and
Yeah.
it's going to be a PlayStation VR launch window title, which
Right.
we don't it's very nebulous, but we'll be playing
Not
it.
that nebulous.
We'll be playing it soon.
Yes,
Yes.
I would say. Our plan right now is to ship this year.
Cool.
In that launch window. Certainly, I mean, ideally for us, it would be probably holiday. And but you know what, things can change. Sony might say, hey, we got this other idea.
Sure.
Let's do this, and we're totally open to that. In the meantime, I'm also doing.
Right. Yes.
I have to shamelessly plug
please do.
my Kickstarter.
Yes.
Go to thefirstdreamer.com, and I'm doing a musical prequel to Golem. So a musical that's going to evoke the sense of wonder and mystery, and it's a standalone listening experience that I'd love to have people listen to some music before they ever play the game. So maybe they'll have some stories that are going on in their head, and then when they play the game, they'll hear some of that music and they'll have already sort of an emotional attachment or something.
Was this a prequel sort of creative spark for you to kind of get in the headspace to start working on the score for Golem, or was because I've read that you like to look at the visuals and look at the assets and stuff come together in a game, and then you compose to that. But did you start composing the minute that the idea kind of started to go in this direction, and this is the collection that we're going to get on the album?
Yeah, sure, we could say it that way.
Okay.
Or perhaps this is a way to spark me to actually start composing.
Got you, because pieces are still coming together.
That's right. Well, yeah, this is why it's, I've got a lot of work to do, let me just say. So
Yeah.
if the people support this, then I go, oh, okay, I guess I better do this.
That's awesome.
We
And this
don't-
is stuff you wanted to do with Destiny, but it didn't come together, right? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And to me, I thought it was what you just said was a reason why we decided years ago, because Destiny's production was taking its time.
Yeah.
And there was we had hit the delete button essentially on like 10 years of Halo music.
Yeah.
And I remember saying, we need to start building up a new library of Destiny music, and I need to have a lot of
Especially
themes.
for the kind of game that is. Totally.
And
yeah.
the decision was, well, gee, what if you actually did a standalone thing and had a different sort of structural reason to create all this music? And I'm like, oh, I love that idea. And so I did that, and then it never saw the light of day.
And holy shit, does that franchise need something like that? Like there's a lot of fill in the gaps with that brand. You know that. I don't want to. I like Destiny a lot. I think it's a really, really cool game.
too.
There's a lot of beauty in that game, but man, it needs a little more of that beauty. But it sounds like you have the freedom to build as much beauty as you want now.
Well, let me just say that's one of the great things about a Kickstarter
Yeah.
is that it's like it's up to me,
Yeah.
and actually there's nobody above me that can say, no,
Yeah.
now that you've done all that work, we're not going to do anything. It's like the onus is on me, and I get to control it. So.
Gotcha. Marty, I don't want to necessarily end on a sour note here, no pun intended, but what was it like after the fact that the work that you and Paul McCartney did, it didn't get the fanfare, it didn't get the buzz, it didn't get the hype that I'm sure both of you were kind of counting on.
Yeah.
How did it end with that collaboration with Paul? Was he okay with everything?
Yeah, well, Paul's an amazing person. I think he's basically okay with everything, and he's always moving forward. And we actually stopped working together at the end of 2012. We worked almost for 2 years together. But he was already moving on. We kept collaborating over time to say, here's what we're planning, and here's what we think's going to happen, and blah blah blah. And it didn't quite come. And within a couple of months after I was gone, I got a call on my car phone, and it was just, hello, Monty, this is Paul. I've been hearing some rumors, and I'm like, yeah.
Oh my God.
So, I'm sorry, yes. And he says, well, listen, we're good, we're fine, hang in there. I'm sure it's tough, and it's, so it was a really sweet moment for him to call and just encourage me, and so I appreciate that a lot. And so, I'm still hoping that at some point the work we did together, I can talk freely about it because people can hear it, and I can say, this is how this all went together, and Mike Salvatore and myself and all the other people, plus Paul and his band. And then Paul also contributed to just about every piece along the way. So.
Is any of his work, can you hear it at all in Destiny?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I mean, and I would love to say, that that bit there, and this theme, and that thing, and this is how it all came together. I want to talk about all that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's terrible that it's all mired in this this weird void, but
Yeah.
it still must be surreal that happened.
Oh well, Paul is my, he was the one of my main childhood heroes,
Yeah.
and I never in a million years thought I would have an opportunity to work with Paul, and it was better than I could have imagined.
Yeah.
And the amazing thing is, he understood that, like, hey, we're just two musicians, and if this works, great. If it doesn't, that's no big deal. But
Yeah.
it couldn't be that I was just like, oh yes, you're so wonderful, I can't do anything.
Yeah.
We had to have that period where, I knew he trusted me, and that I actually believed that what we would do together would be better than what we would not do by ourselves.
Sure.
And that's the kind of thing you have to do in any collaboration,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and you can't just be working as a fanboy
Yeah.
and have something good come of it. So
Are you excited to? I would imagine one of the cool things about virtual reality is that that divide of thumbsticks is kind of out the window, right? You just put the headset on your head, and there's an element of understanding
Yeah.
how to kind of navigate inside of the space. And I know that he's not a big gamer. He talks about losing the
Yes.
rock band Beatles to his grandkids, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
But are you excited to send him a PlayStation VR thing and have him try Golem and disappear into that for a bit?
Yes, absolutely. And as a matter of fact, we have, like I was saying before, we've had people who just don't play games.
Yeah.
And they put this on, and they immediately are able to do amazing things because they don't have any conditions, preconditions, or expectations.
Sure.
One other thing I was going to say really quick about, like, the smaller teams making AAA content. I think it have the AAA polish. It might not have the 80, 100 hours of gameplay, but I mean, just look at this year.
Yeah.
Ori and the Blind Forest. Everybody's gone to the Rapture.
Yeah.
Her Story.
Right.
These.
Firewatch.
At Firewatch, yeah. I mean, these are all games that are small teams with AAA sensibilities.
Sure.
And the fans and the awards shows they're right next to the big games. So.
Rocket League too, right?
Oh yeah, of
Right?
course, I
The
know.
phenomenal
Amazing.
Rocket League.
Yeah. So, I'm not saying that's the death of AAA. I'm just
Yeah.
saying that there are different ways of doing it, different team sizes.
That's very interesting because I think you've gone through the gamut of growth. You've run through that gauntlet of trying to figure out how you manage all of those people. But through all of that, all of these really incredible digital technologies became very accessible and very inexpensive, and all of these past processes and stuff kind of got shared through, events like GDC and stuff like that. So maybe there is this shared knowledge base so that one person is like 5 developers from 5 years ago or 10 years ago. Maybe there is this sense of jack of all tradesness because some of the messiness of game development has kind of started to shape up a little bit.
Well, I mean, like I said before, each person on our team is at least a triple threat.
Yeah.
And both, for example, I mean, I was known as a music producer in
Yeah.
Chicago, so I have production sensibilities along with composition. And
Couldn't
of
be
course-
running a studio if you didn't, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Jamie is a writer and a producer and a creative and a designer. I mean, he's got a double major in physics and philosophy, which is the perfect game design double major, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah.
And Jared has started his own company. He's got a lot of business sense. He could be a biz dev guy, and he's also an expert
Designer.
programmer.
Or a programmer.
And so it's just like everybody has to do more than one thing,
Yeah.
and that's okay. Vic DeLeon is one of our great artists who worked on Halo stuff forever.
Yeah.
And ran outsourcing.
He unzens tweets every night, right?
Yeah, that's that guy.
That shit freaks me out every night. I was like, what the hell are you doing? Every time I see it, I was like, you creep me out, dude.
Well, Victor says hi. Or I mean, Vic says hi to Victor, so
All right.
he
That's
told me to say hi.
reciprocal.
Yes,
Okay,
okay,
cool.
good.
That's awesome. Well, Marty, I know that everybody that knows you and has followed your work and is a fan of you is incredibly happy with what's happening with Highwire and with Golem and with VR, and we can't wait to play this thing. Can't wait to see what's next. And congratulations, man.
Thanks.
Talk about a Phoenix Rising. It's
Oh, well,
fantastic.
thank you very much.
All
Appreciate
right.
it.
Thanks for joining us. All right, everybody. We'll be back next week with a brand new Vic's Basement. Thanks for watching. Stitcher! Hey, thanks for checking out that video on our EPN channel. It's just one small part of the things that we make around here. So if you liked it, don't forget to check out some of our other vids and hit that subscribe button.